All right. We have the honor of Heather Baskin being with us tonight. From preschool teacher to college professor, biopsychology major to ESL master's degree, trainer of lifeguards to developing leaders and involvement in education from rural to international platforms, Heather has focused on personal connections and continuous learning for all ages. Currently, she is the Gifted Education Director for Mesa Administrative Unit. She is also a representative on the Colorado Education Gifted Forum, a certified concept-based trainer, liaison for D51 GT Advisory Committee, a member of CAEGTC, and an adjunct professor for CMU teaching twice exceptional courses. Her consistent focus for over 10 years has been advocating for gifted youth in education. And we have a real treat tonight. The title of her presentation tonight is Tiered Support for High School ALPs. She's going to share the work that she's been doing on the Western Slope. So if you can all help me welcome Heather tonight, we're excited to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. I will share my screen here really quick. Just make sure, can you give me a nod? Awesome. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it was on there. Perfect. This is not a real sexy title. I actually want to thank CAGT too for putting these together. I'll have to say, I don't often attend these live because, as you know, all of our lives are busy, but I go back through the titles and watch so many of them again and again. So I'm hoping that this one is one that can be a resource that adds to our bank in CAGT, because there's so many great ones on there. And I just appreciate CAGT both putting this on, and then also there are so many people that I admire that have done this before and added to this bank of resources. So I feel honored to be one of those. So thank you very much. So yes, tiered high school GT support. I'm going to go through kind of what we've done in this. This has been mostly presented to teachers and counselors. And I did want to do this because I also want input questions from students and families as well. If you're a teacher or counselor that's joining, I absolutely want your questions also, but this has been more vetted by teachers and counselors than by students and families. So any questions out there, whether it's during this live or, like I said, I watch a lot of them afterwards. So afterwards I will give contact information, and feel free to reach out to me if there's things that, that you would like to know more about. So let's dive in really quick. My contact information is at the end. I will share all of that. But just to kind of look at the agenda now, this agenda and actually this PowerPoint was presented at a conference for counselors this last fall. So a lot of it I've stolen from that. So this kind of gives an overview of the things that we're going to go through. There's some acronyms in here that, again, when I say I want input from parents and students, families and students, acronyms like the MTSS and things, I will try and take those out or also explain those as I go. If anybody has a question while we're live, I know that the live chat is being watched and I can be interrupted at any time. So if there's something that you don't understand or you have a question about, feel absolutely free to throw that question in chat and I'm happy to answer it right then. So we're going to discuss MTSS as the multi-tiered systems of support. That's how Colorado looks at supporting our students that have differing needs in our classrooms. So that's my best way to explain MTSS, both for academic and behavior as well. And we really really looked at how to do this for high school GT population. It could be used for other students, and I'll kind of talk about that a little bit later, both other, not just GT, but also not just high school. There's a lot of use that these tools in this process can be used to look at different students and support them differently. Also the role of the high school counselor within this process and how we used it. But as I've presented to other groups, there's also been a lot of different ideas because every district kind of constructs their gifted programming specifically at high school differently. And so there's pieces of this that can be taken and adapted in different situations. The collaboration with students, and that says parents. I really want that to say families. I didn't get that one changed, but students and families, because they're a big part of that process and how students are supported. Looking at the outcomes, what happened as we implemented this, and then also future plans, or how we're looking to change, how we're adapting things as we're going. And then we will talk about, like I said, how to expand the system. And there will be time at the end too for any thoughts that you have as you listen of, oh my gosh, this would fit really well with this, or I'm concerned about this, or whatever. So just to kind of tee that up, if you will think as you listen to this, what ideas can you take away? Again, whether you're a teacher, a counselor, a family member, a student, what ideas can you take away that would help you in however you're approaching this and whatever brought you to this video? What would be possible next steps for you? What are things that are challenges that you're like, oh my gosh, that would be great, except there's this, whatever it is that's getting in the way. And then are there any things that you could share with the group? The other thing that I've learned is I've presented this several times in front of different groups in different districts, is each time I hear something else that helps me think of it in a different way and improve it even more as I go through. So if there's anything that you come away with that you would like to share, it always helps the rest of us out in how we think through things too. So all of that being said, let's dive in. And it says it started with a conversation and problem solving. There was a little bit that led up to that conversation, but a conversation that I was having with a principal, and we were talking about, we don't have designated staff in our school district and our high schools to support our GT students. We do have stipends that we give for, it's usually counselors that help support our GT students. And they help write the goals on their advanced learning plans, and they help support those and do that kind of thing. But we don't have, it's not a set someone's job. And I had heard, so another school district here in Colorado, Roaring Fork, had started talking about and using a tiered approach. So looking at different supports for different students, different GT students. And they had started a process, and I had kind of started just percolating on it in my head. And I was talking to a principal about it because he was saying, man, we have 130 ALPs and we have one person that's getting a stipend to write all the goals on it. And students are feeling like it's worthless to do. And how do we make this better? And I said, you know, I'm playing with this idea of trying to do different tiered support. So some kids we have those kids that come into high school that are set. They're like, they know what their goals are. They know the path to get there. They know how to do it. They are on a great path and they're doing great. And then we have other students that are floundering a little or need more support in whether it's academics or social emotional or executive functioning skills, organization, that kind of thing. And I said, I'm really thinking about how could we put together different supports for different students that we have that are GT students and have that be different tiered supports. And the principal said to me, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. So those students that are like not really doing so great anymore, we could just exit them from the GT program. And I was like, no, actually opposite of that. Exactly opposite. But that got me to start thinking. And maybe someday that principal will watch this and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she put that, but I'm not going to share any names or where they were from or anything. And I don't think it was a unintended mean comment or anything. It was just that comment of, I think we get in the thought and philosophy of a gifted student is a good student and should and will do well. And if they're not, they must not be gifted anymore. And I kept coming back to, how do I help a staff, a counselor, a whoever that's helping my high school students? How do I help them and put as much as I can in front of them, because they don't have training around gifted characteristics and strategies and all of that, put as much as I can in front of them to help them know which students are going to need support and which students, how to help narrow that down of those supports. While at the same time, how do I also how do I also help? And this is very much my philosophy of gifted education. How do I also help portray? I believe our philosophy in education is to help students become autonomous learners, George Betts, woohoo, autonomous learners. And when they're not there yet, there's something that we still need to help support them, because that's our end goal. When they leave us, I'm in K-12, when they leave us 12th grade or graduate early 11th grade, I'm hoping that they have the SEL skills, the social emotional skills, the executive functioning skills, the academic skills, the goal setting skills, to be able to go out and learn, continue their lives, achieve their goals as they need to. So whether or not they're a gifted kid or not, that's my philosophy of education. But a gifted student, we don't just go, oh, well, they're high achieving, they should continue to get gifted services. No, we need to get to that autonomous learner part of that student for them to be done with our system, or for them to be ready to graduate. I just had, my son just graduated last night, and I'm really thinking about graduation and as we release these kids into the world, what we want them to be. So it started with this conversation with this principal, and trying to figure out how to problem solve all those things and use these thoughts that had been percolating in my mind. So what we came up with, and when I say we, this is lots of different input, lots of different things, but we did actually just jump in. This started the fall of 2020. So I think you all know where we were the fall of 2020. We were just coming out of COVID. We do have the benefit that the majority of our schools over here in Grand Junction, we were in person. We had different mask mandates, different things, blah, 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 but we were in person. But this was rolled out fall of 2020. So we learned some things through COVID, but also just through this process, but we did roll it out this year. So, or that year, we did decide to do 3 different levels, to look at students and say, okay, we're going to provide 3 different levels of service for students within our high schools. I'll explain these 3 levels in a second. I'll also explain how we decided that those students got a level 1 service, level 2, level 3. Again, if you have questions as I'm going, feel free to throw them in chat. So level 1, there's a lot of words here. The biggest part that I want you to pay attention to right now is what's in bold, is that these students will not be asked to develop individualized goals as part of an advanced learning plan, but will have an individualized career academic plan and general ALP goals. That means we're still developing an ALP. We didn't say, oh, you're good, no ALP for you, but it's more of a general ALP. And I believe I had a slide that has that general ALP goal. If not, then I will make sure that I get it before the end. But it just said, these students have all of our school-wide supports. They're on a group email list. They receive monthly newsletters. They're invited to monthly luncheons if that school has them. And there's evidence that these students don't need direct guidance or oversight. So those are those kids that come in. They're pretty good autonomous learners at that point. They are academically doing well. They're setting goals, socially, emotionally doing well. Executive functioning is going pretty well. Things are going pretty good. So we're not going to have them develop individual ALP goals. It's a general goal, but they still are going to do their ICAP, so an individualized career academic plan. Again, that's if you're from another state or country, that's a Colorado. Colorado has decided we're going to do those ICAP plans that essentially students look at what they want to do beyond high school and make plans for that. Okay, so that's level 1. Level 2, oh, sorry, that's not where I want to go. Level 2, and it's not going there. Hold on, let me escape here really quick to see. Oh, nope, it does. That is where I want to go. Look, my slideshow's smarter than me. Oh my gosh. Okay. I did put this slide in. This is the one I was actually talking about. This was our general ALP goal that we did for those students for tier 1. I forgot that I put it right after that because that's usually the question that comes is how did you write that? So this would be the student's name. So Elizabeth will continue to make measurable expected growth and maintain advanced academic performance in their area or areas of identification. Elizabeth will continue to demonstrate an age-appropriate awareness and management of social emotional skills. So essentially that's our academic goal and our affective, our social emotional goal, saying they're doing really well and their goal is to continue on that pathway doing well. Again, I'll tell you how we kind of determined these academic and social emotional, but that was the general goal that we wrote for ALPs. So level 2 was then, and again, pay attention to the bold right here. So these students will be asked to develop goals as part of an advanced learning plan, an ALP, and we will check in quarterly on progress. So those are the bold pieces. There's other pieces in here that once they've developed their ALP, GT liaison is the person that we stipend to do those advanced learning plans, but it could also be an advisory teacher checking in or a mentor chosen by the student. We opened this up so that the student would have voice in who was the person that was helping them with their goals and checking in with them on their goals, and that it was a quarterly check-in on that progress. That was our level 2. And then our level 3, again, very much like level 2, they're writing an ALP, but the bold will personally be checking in with these students every 2 to 4 weeks. So it's more consistent check-in. So these are our different levels. And this is the level of support that we are giving the students. These levels are flexible. These levels are initially decided by a team at the school, but can be changed or can be adjusted based on student and family input. When I say they can be adjusted, we would not normally, except in extreme circumstances. Let's say a team at the school decided a level 3 support was needed. We would not have a student or family say, nope, we just want level 1. We would always say, yep, we can level up support, but we would rarely level down support because we had evidence showing that that student was needing more support. So let me show you how I got into the more support. I am going to stop for just a second. Did any questions come in so far on that part?
I don't see any questions so far, but for those of you watching, if you do have questions, I'm watching it and Heather said I could interrupt her, so.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I can still see you. So if you just even shake your head at me and go, nope, not yet, I'll just keep going. Okay, so these were our levels, and this we shared with families, with students, saying this is what we're going to be doing. This was not a behind the scenes, nobody knew. This is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking at our advanced learning plans a little differently, and we're going to be supporting students a little differently in this upcoming year. So here's how I wanted to make it really clear for my schools. I wanted to really help them out. I created a spreadsheet for each one of our high schools. Yes, it was more work on my part up front, but the payout that I got on the other end was well worth the time that was put into it. So I created a spreadsheet, one, because one of the things that was said is we don't even know, it's hard for us to even find what students are identified and what they're identified in. If we could go to one place and find that, that would be amazing. So I'm like, perfect, we can create a spreadsheet. Yep, done. I will absolutely do that. So create a spreadsheet, one for each of our high schools. I will say even this spreadsheet has changed a little bit. I have now, myself and those of us that work in the GT department here, we have split out these areas identified because the people that are working on this spreadsheet can now sort by last name. They can sort by grade level. So they can put all their, in this one, you can see it sorted by grade level, all their juniors were together. But I broke these out too into different columns so they can sort all by who are my kids that are identified in reading so that they could see all the students identified in reading. And we actually have color coded too. So all of our 9th graders are color coded one color, 10th, 11th, 12th. So if they sort by the identified area, they can say, here's all my kids in reading. And I see, ooh, here's 5 that are 9th graders by color. Here's 6 that are 10th graders, whatever. It just makes it really easy to do really quick sorts, to look at different things. If you're looking at classes, if you're looking at what teachers need to know, if you look at whatever, it's a really quick way for them to be able to get that information and sort it in the way that they need to. So they got all of this on a spreadsheet, the names, the ID numbers, grade, and area identified. You notice there's a lot of other things on here. And this is what I asked them to do. Again, the person that's getting the stipend, often a counselor, and usually their counseling team, because I asked them not to do it in isolation. I said, please do it as a team. So what I asked them to do, and I think it's in the next, yeah, that was the all students tab. What I asked them to do was I asked them to determine an academic level of support, an affective, including social, emotional, and executive functioning, level of support, and then to kind of come up with what is going to be the level of support for that student. So let me talk through that just a little bit to kind of tell you how we did this. So on this spreadsheet, they had that tab I just showed you was their all students, all the students that are identified, all that information. They also had a tab on there for math identified students, ELA identified students, all others. And I think I started doing one that was a math and ELA. Again, some of this has been adjusted as we've gone, just as they've said, ooh, could we have this? It would be helpful to have this. So things have been adjusted since we started. If you look at so this would be our math. So that tab that I just showed you, this math ID tab at the bottom of that spreadsheet. If you went to the math one, so the students' names and ID numbers would be over here. They're just cut off because you didn't need to see them. We would always indicate if they had an IEP, so if they had a disability and they were identified special ed, if they had a 504, or if they had, if they were ELL, if they were English language learner. So we would say yes or no on those. If it was yes, and you don't have any that are here, we would code that red so that they could see it right off. Hey, another plan, make sure that you're checking in and connecting with these people. But then if you looked across, and remember, this is fall of 2020, so we didn't have a ton of data. So I just took whatever data we had, and you can see I have some older data, but I just went, okay, let's look at kind of a picture of this student. So this is a student that's identified in math, and I color coded these for them so they could look across really quickly to say, okay, this student right here that exceeded on their CMAS, that's our state test, they exceeded their overall level of where they scored. They had pretty typical growth. Even this one had high growth. And then look at these 99th, 98th percentiles. These are percentiles on, this is all NWA. So these are ones that we do within our district. This would be a student that we would say, and I color coded it the same as those levels. Look how quick you look across and go, lots of green, pretty sure that's a level 1 for academic. So we would look at that student and go, yep, probably level 1 for academic. They're doing it as a team. So there could be someone in the team that goes, hey, yep, green on those, but I know that this student just took their PSAT and absolutely struggled or bombed that or whatever. Maybe we should take that into consideration. So I told them, here's one piece snapshot, bring in other information, other things you know about the student as well. So they would probably color code this student green. If you look at the one just above it, there's a green, but the more recent, so it's more recent data that goes over, you've got reds and yellows. So that team would then decide, are we going to color code this academic level 2 or level 3, because we've got a number of yellows and we've got a red. So they would just look at these and they would look at them as an overall, they would look across and they would decide as a team, how are we going to essentially say what the support would be for academic for this student. And then they go back to that spreadsheet and they would put them in. I'm going to wait for a second to go to that. When they would put, I actually conditionally formatted this. And again, if you're a director and you're like, oh my gosh, how did you do it? Like, again, questions. I have this all made. I'm happy to share any of it. Do not, if you don't know how to conditionally format, all they had to do was put a 1 in this academic box and hit return, and it automatically color coded it green. They put a 2 in, automatically color coded it yellow. I tried to make it as easy as possible so they didn't have to do any of those things. So they went down and did all that for academic. The next thing they look at is this affective, so the SEL executive functioning. The way we did that is we have, so in our district, we partner with a company called Panorama. Panorama does overall look at the health and wellness SEL of your teachers, your families, and your students. But we can also do what's called a health screener. I got an email, oh, I can't even remember what district it was from, that they said, wait, you said you use Panorama, but ours are all anonymous. The overall health and wellness is anonymous, but we do a wellness screener with our students, which is a little different. And it asks, and the only reason this is on here, I know it's tiny print, but I'll read some of them. It asks specific questions of the students. So do you regularly feel hungry at home because you don't have enough food to eat? Do you live in a tent, camper, hotel? It even gets to, are you currently being bullied at school? Do you have a trusted adult at school? Do you have a trusted adult outside of school? Do you feel stressed often? Do you know how to deal with that stress? They're mostly just yes, no answers, but then it helps us, again, it color codes automatically, goes down and says, if they answered yes to, would you like to speak to a school counselor about major changes in your family? We color coded that red. That's a yes, like, yep, they did. And then that helped us look at that student again, looked across really quickly, how many reds, how many yellows do they have in there? And would we say they are at a level 1, level 2, level 3 support? That's why I wanted them in a team. So it wasn't one person looking across this and just going, nah, no, I think that one's green. Yep, that one's yellow, whatever. I wanted them to have that discussion as a team. So they looked across these to see what SEL things are coming up. And same thing as before, they might look across this and the student was like, nope, I'm good there. Nope, I'm good there. But they go, oh my gosh, this student keeps coming into the counseling office. They are really struggling with this, or their parents are going through a divorce right now. And I know they're struggling after this thing happened, whatever. If there was other information that they had of, we might want to support this student a little bit more, they put that information in there too, but this was just one way to look at it. All of that to say, if you're a family member, a student, a counselor, or teacher right now, and you're like, oh, we don't have Panorama, there's nothing. I love Panorama. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use that, but you don't have to have that to do this. These questions, and they're asked of all of our students, not just our GT students. These questions were just about us asking our students about their safety, their health, and their wellness. You could do that with anything. And I think you could do a quick search of, you know, what are good questions to ask students to make sure that they're supported. And a Google form could be put together that's a survey. It doesn't have to be Panorama. So don't let that make you think, oh, we can't do this part of it. You absolutely could to be able to get that same data. Okay, so this is what we ended up with. So you saw the spreadsheet on how they got it at the beginning, just essentially the students' names, what they were identified in. This is a snapshot of one of our schools after they had gotten their spreadsheet. So they put in, again, they just put in the color and hit return and the number, hit return and automatically the color. So it's really easy to see again. You look across and go, okay, yeah, this student, we're gonna give a level 2 support. This student academically was a level 3, but affectively was a level 1. Just so that you know, this was not automatically averaged. It's not like, oh, a 3 and a 2 equals a 1. There's some of these on here that it would have a 3, a 1, and then they'd end up a 3 because they're like, that's something we really need to pay attention to. Again, that's why you do it as a group and you look at it as a group, because it's not an automatic, like you see this one, 1 for academic, a 2 for social emotional. They decided a 2 was going to be the level of support. They started adding in other columns here. So they put notes to themselves of, these are things that the kids said in their SEL survey of, I have anxiety, I get stressed about things easily, but I'm doing better, you know, whatever. They kind of gave themselves notes that would be a really quick reminder of things that they could look at. And then they started putting in, what are the dates that they're checking in with the students? Because remember, we said those level 2 students, we were going to check in with at least quarterly. The level 3 students, we were going to check in with every 2 to 4 weeks. So we started putting dates in here so that we could keep track of when are we checking in. And it's not on this one, but I believe all of our spreadsheets now also have a name. Who's going to be the person that's checking in? So if that student said, I really connect with this teacher or whatever, that name got put in there so that we would know who was checking in. It's just kind of our accountability to ourselves too. Any SEL notes, they put in frequency here. This teacher was doing, she gave the students a choice if they wanted to do a traditional ALP, write their goals, or if they wanted to do kind of a capstone passion project kind of thing. So this was her own notes, but they made that spreadsheet their own on the things they needed to keep track of and what they needed to do. This was where, so again, I took this PowerPoint from myself. I presented with, her name's Colleen Stabiletsky. She's amazing. She's one of our counselors. And she presented a lot of these pieces. this was what we would present to our students, our GT students, as they came in, and just said, our GT students, that GT liaison and counselor, they work together as a team to do these kind of things, these customized schedules, college and career preparation, extracurricular activities, challenging courses, contests, and competitions. And we always told them this, and like, hey, feel free to reach out to us, and we're going to be helping you write your ALP, and we're going to be doing all this. But it felt very much like compliance rather than we're here to help support you. So we went from this to very different conversations and very different support for our students, just in this slight shift that we did. So all of these things were kind of implied before, but this is really what happened afterwards. So the GT teacher liaison, again, that's our high school person, is a case manager for support, and then could look at, looking at that academic and social emotional, could start to look at, how do we use community resources? How do we provide extra social emotional support? How do we help with differentiation within our classroom? How do we look at scholarship possibilities for students and how that connects to their strengths, what they're looking at, what that student's interested in? How do we look at infusing those interests into our schoolwork? How do we look at independent studies, flexibility and schedule? So all of these things started to become part of, we can now look at a student and go, okay, are these other things that we possibly might need to help connect the pieces for this student because they're not there yet and it's impacting academics or it's impacting social emotional. She took this and she actually created, so it came out even in, how often are you supposed to are you able to pull yourself out of a bad mood? So it would tell them almost always, almost never. It would give them color coding in that. She was able to take that and then put together that screening data to help make action plans. So there was a question on there, are you concerned about the health of your family members? If they answer yes, she put this whole document together to say, if they answered yes, here's some other things that we possibly could do to help support this student. So it led to a supporting document of not just here's the data and yep, they need help, but here are possible things that we could do for any student, not just GT students, but then how do we help support those GT students as well? It just became like I said, different conversations. I have to say, even the conversations, and I think the people that I've had in my high schools, really hardworking. This is added on to their already full-time job, and they're trying to do the best they can, but they either don't know how to, or they didn't have something in front of them showing them what to do. And our conversations went from, yep, we're done with ALPs. Yep, we did it. Oh, I got them all done except for these kids that didn't want to check in. Yep, check at the beginning of the year, to I was getting emails and stuff of, hey, we had this student that we had at a level 1, and their brother or sister just had a horrible accident. Can we adjust their level of support? And I'm like, yes, 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 we can. So it was very much more about how do we support the students rather than how do we complete the ALP. The whole conversation shifted in just putting it on this. Now, we're not perfect. And I'm guessing I might get some people from District 51 watch this and be like, what? No, we still have a lot to work on. We do have a lot to work on still, but it has shifted a lot of that thinking. And my whole reason behind how and why to do this, it shifted those conversations and what we were doing. This is another resource guide that was put together, again, by that counselor, and just all the different resources and supports we have both within our school. Again, it's small print, and I'm sure you can't see it super well, but it does say here, we have different things for substance abuse and who to contact. So then this got shared with all of our counselors to say, if this is something that pops up, whether it's in a conversation or on that survey where the student self-reported something, here are some direct resources that we can use in our school district and in our community to help support these students, and how do we look at that. It also, we had a student, so again, the chain of conversation. we had a student that looked like probably was a suicide risk, like it was having a lot of issues. And there were pieces that we were able to pick up in going through this whole process to help support that student. And the ALP became part of the mental health counselor that was checking in with that student, rather than a different person trying to connect with that student. We tried to build really strong bonds. They felt really comfortable with their mental health person. So the ALP became part of the check-in for their process. And the mental health counselor just went, yep, we've checked in on it. Yep, they're making, or they want to change their goals or whatever. It was not a report out on mental health and what was happening. It was just here are things we also do with the ALP. How do we embed that in with what needs to happen with this student? We also had another student that GT student looked like they weren't going to graduate their senior year. And again, middle of COVID, all this stuff happening. And I had somebody reach out to me and say, yeah, we have this one student, but you know, COVID and all those things. I was able to pull the same data that I had put on the spreadsheet for that student back in 8th grade, 9th, 10th, and 11th. And I was able to show that they went from, they were that green level 1 support student to then started to look yellow, red as they went through. And it really was like a light bulb moment of, this is why we're doing this. And it was a conversation with the school. We're doing this so that we can catch those flags early on, so we don't get a senior GT or not, but a GT senior that isn't going to graduate because we haven't watched as they've gone from advanced to proficient down to now they're not proficient anymore, and they may not graduate because they're not passing classes, they're not passing tests, they're not all of those different pieces. So that also was part of the data that I put in there, was test passing. And this counselor, she would have conversations with kids saying, hey, we're really looking at, you know, your test scores, and it looks like academically you're kind of in this red for level of support. And they said, well, I just blew off that test. I didn't care about that test. And so she was able to then have a conversation of, we look at those to see if things are okay with you. And so how else would you like us to help support you? It just started, again, another conversation. It just started another conversation, not in, yes, you have to take those seriously, and yes, you have to take those tests, because that's also, you know, we have families that say, nope, we don't want our kids taking tests and opt their kids out. But it just changed that conversation of, we have no testing data. How do we know if your child is growing? How do we help with that if we have no testing data? Change the conversations a ton. So this is then working with the students and the family. We discussed the survey, that social emotional one that the students filled out, saying this is self-reported. It's not us making a diagnosis of a student, but us just looking at their answers. She was giving the meaningful ALP or Genius Hour project for those yellow and red zone students. She did individual check-ins and let them check in with her or again, somebody else. She did consult with parents with families on that level of support of going, this is what we're thinking. Again, do you want to level up support? We're not going to lower the level of support because we have this data showing that this is what we're going to do. But if you want to level up, we can. And we did have due diligence. There's some students that we will send out, hey, we want to help support your ALP, and we send out 5 communications and we can't get a hold of the student, can't get a hold of the parents. I have told my people, our job is not to chase people down. If you have a red zone student and there's some really big concerns, SEL and academic, let's try and look at all the ways that we can support that student. But I don't require them to continue to chase a student for an ALP. I do say if it's red, we probably have some big things to support the student, whether they're a GT student or not. So we do our due diligence in contacting and trying to write our ALP, but it's really about that level of support for that student. I'm going to skip through some of this pretty quickly. I can go back if anybody has any questions. This is what our ALP looks like. This is one of the ones, and it's a Google form, that survey that they fill out that then we get back and those counselors and that team look at as well. Our outcomes, I think I've talked about a lot of these as we've gone through at the school level. We found that students were getting the support who needed it. That was the other thing. How do we take our limited resources and put them where we need them at the right time, at the right place? It was really data driven. There was also family and student ownership in that. It helped our ALP become more relevant, but that is definitely where we still need to work, is we need more relevance in our goals on our ALPs, because we haven't done a ton of work around that. It helped them use their time more effectively. Again, district-wise, same thing, helped us use our limited resources, data-driven. It helped meet state compliance. We always had this like, oh, well, we're meeting the state of writing our ALPs, but everybody was like, these ALPs are worthless. So that wasn't good enough for me. I wanted to make sure we were actually helping students, not just meeting compliance. It also opened up other conversations of how do we look at other students that we might need to look at this way. And also, I have a couple middle schools and elementary school that have a whole lot of identifications, and we're trying to look at, we have limited resources in those. So we might start to look at different tiered supports in those places too. So this isn't just a high school thing, that's where we started it, but we're looking at where, this is everybody, here you go. Where do you have limited resources and you're trying to figure out how to put the best time and resources in the best place? That's really what it came down to. We do have future plans of how to adjust things. Again, I've talked about some of this already. That academic data that I gave them, I just would do it at the beginning of the year. We actually have built a tool now where they can pull that academic data at any point in the year. So if they've done a new NWA test or something, they can look at that to see how students are doing. We are looking at a way to adjust next year to do an increased link to mentors, internships, student interests based on a student that might need something different than our traditional pathway, which are usually a lot of times those level 2, level 3 students that we come up with. So this is, again, questions, anything that you have, time to share ideas. Here's my contact information. I do have one more slide after this that I'll put up at the very, very end, but if there's any questions that came in, or even Elizabeth, if there's any that you're thinking, and I'll just leave this one up there so that my contact information is there too.
Sure, sounds wonderful. I am so impressed with what you have put in place. That's a big undertaking. And I think the first step is always changing the conversation, right? That's the first step to getting anything done. We did have one question come in from our very own Michelle Barkmeyer.
Oh, hi,
Michelle. Yeah. She said, what amazing supports for the teachers. Do you bring families in for those yellow and red students? She kind of asked this before you went to the parent piece. Do you bring them in for every level, or particularly for those higher tiered supports?
At high school, we don't normally bring the parent in. What we have done in the past is, and again, this is what we've done in the past, it's things that this is also where, you know, kind of having that family lens and student lens, there may be things we need to adjust, but what we've done in the past is we have let parents know, and even before we did this, we've let parents know, we're going to be writing ALP goals, we're going to be looking at this, we're going to be sitting with your student and doing this. If you want to know about that, ask your student, but if you're, I have 3 kids of my own. Sometimes those answers are nope, yep. So if you need more information at any point in time, that GT liaison, usually a counselor, I'm happy to meet with you. I'm happy to email back and forth with you. If you're like, did they write their goals? Can I know what their goals are? There's also the way that we were housing them. Parents could get in and see those goals. Families could get in and see those goals. But we didn't specifically bring parents in to help write those goals. What we did do, and what we're trying to get back to, is we did a kind of like welcome to high school, GT, how's it gonna look different? We did an evening where we presented to incoming 8th graders, or we have one school that has incoming 10th graders. We presented to them, this is how things now change when you get to high school. You don't have, we have GT teachers. We are really lucky in that we have GT teachers in every elementary and middle school, traditional school. So they are used to having someone that is designated to help write their ALP, to check in with, to ask questions, all of that. So it's kind of this shift of, we don't have a designated staff person, but here's all your people that have supports, and this is the process we're going to go through. We have not done those welcome to high school GT meetings. Again, COVID threw us for a little loop. So we haven't done them for a while, but that is one that we'd like to get back to. we do have the philosophy of trying to turn it more over to the students. So the students are in charge of their goal and all of that. And sometimes that's tough for a parent to be like, no, I want to know what's going on. We were always involved before. But we try and involve the parents, not that we're trying to block you out, but we're also trying to build that power in your student for them taking ownership of all of it as well. So again, I don't think we're perfect at it, but those are the steps that we've tried to take.
Perfect. Real quick question. Nanette wanted to know, have you submitted a proposal yet for conference to present on this?
I have not, Nanette. I will. I think I have it all, like I could probably put it together pretty quick.
Okay, perfect. Terry Bradley, look at all these people.
Hi, Terry.
Joining us
oh my
tonight.
gosh. Hi, I miss your face, Terry. Hi.
She asked, what kind of feedback have you gotten from students about this more individualized system?
So the cool thing is we just had our GEM. So here in Colorado, gifted education monitoring happens every 4 to 5 years, where our Department of Education comes to our districts, does meetings with different stakeholders, and then gives us feedback. And we just ran our GEM in April, beginning of April. And we had a group of students that I got to sit in and listen, high school students, I got to listen. And it was so interesting because we had a couple different high schools represented. And there's one that I know that the liaison, the counselor, she was being really intentional of, okay, these are the students that I'm supporting, and I'm checking in with them to say, okay, here's what your goals are, how's it going, how are things? And the students were like, it was super funny because they were like, I don't think we've ever had anybody do that before. I don't know that they've ever checked in with us. So again, this is not a blame whatever. ALPs were written and they were done. There wasn't a whole lot of follow-up afterwards. And we now have this, that's part of our process. That's part of what we are meant to do. We're not perfect at that yet either, of students being checked in on, because we had other students go, I'm happy to write goals and I'd like to write goals, but people don't check in. I'm not doing it just to do it. That's ridiculous. And we still have kids saying that. So we still have a way to improve on that. But we had our own students saying, it's funny, they didn't say, oh, we have this new tiered system. Like, it's not like they necessarily knew this was going on, but they said something different has happened. And we actually have somebody that's checking in with us and seeing how we're doing and making a personal connection with us and that kind of thing. So I'm seeing little bits of light of the students going, yeah, this is great. The students actually said too, during that time together, and Terry, you will probably love this. They were like brainstorming around a table, like we did it all virtual, but there was, I don't know, 6 of them, 10 of them around a table. And one of the questions our Department of Education asked was, they said, man, it would be great. Like, we went through middle school and elementary together and we were all together and we could help support each other. And we don't have that anymore. Like, we have classes, but there's all kinds of kids in those classes. And not that those should be just GT classes. They definitely should be for all kids. But we miss our time when there's other kids that understand that we understand each other. And the Department of Education was like, well, how do we get to that? Because the other things we hear are, you guys are really involved. You're in sports, you're in high level classes, you have before school and after school. And how do we do this? And the kids were stumped for a minute. And then one of them said, what if we had our advisory together? And the whole table was like, oh, that would be amazing. Oh, we wish we could have our advisory together. Like, they just lit up. So Terry, I just want you to know, our kids are asking for it. They're asking for that kind of thing and how they could help support each other with that SEL stuff as well. Again, we're still working on trying to get those things in place, but our kids are asking for it.
That's awesome. That's amazing that they don't know what the behind the scenes system is, but I can feel something different.
Yeah, I never heard anything about tiered support or whatever. Yeah. Like, yeah, even though that sheet like was published to all of them, yeah, but they did know something different was going on. Yeah.
Awesome. Connie has a question. What was one thing you did that turned the tide for the GT high schoolers to be more engaged that you were supporting?
And is that Connie Copenhagen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Connie. I feel like all my friends showed up. This is awesome. I think that, so this is super interesting because I was also talking to another district in Colorado that has really worked hard, and they've done a great job of making their ALPs meaningful, of really diving into those goals and making them meaningful. And I feel like we took a different approach. We went, let's narrow down our focus first, and then we're going to start working on making those goals really meaningful. I think just narrowing down our focus, being intentional, communicating that, and then having check-ins helped with the student buy-in. Just like the students said in that meeting, they were like, I would love to do it, and I actually think it could be meaningful if anyone else cared about it, but I'm not going to write it just to write it. I feel like I wrote my ALP for so long in high school and nobody looked at it, and nobody cared. And I can write that down on my piece of paper in my notebook. There's no reason for me to write down my goal for you and then nobody's going to look at it. So I think there was a sense of someone's looking at it, someone's checking in with you, there's reason behind it. And also, I will say too, I think it's huge when we listen to students, and listen to students isn't the right way to say it because I don't know that this process necessarily listened to students. But we had those students that were doing great academically, that were doing great socially, emotionally, that were on a great path, and they would go, why am I writing a goal for you? I don't understand. I have my goals for my future. I have this path. These are the things, like they could essentially outline what you would put in an ALP already. And they're like, why do I have to do that for you? So it was listening to students say, why do I have to do that? And us go, you don't. You're already doing it in ICAP. You are meeting those things academically and socially, emotionally. We're going to step back and get out of your way. And that it was a listen to a students in a step back kind of a way, not in a student saying, well, students were saying, I don't want to do my ALP anymore, but in a step back kind of way to listen to the students. And I think that helped too, in students going, yeah, that's what I needed.
Awesome. I have one last question before we go. We're almost out of time. I was just curious because here at CAGT, we get a lot of phone calls or emails from parents feeling like their child isn't being challenged enough. And I'm looking at your system and I'm thinking, if a parent is feeling like, yeah, my student's, performing well, top of the class, how could, or have you run into the system supporting the kids to be pushed even further because they're not being challenged? They look like they're doing well on paper.
Yeah.
But, they're not actually being pushed beyond what's average or in the typical class. I'm not sure how to.
Yeah, no, I think I know what you're asking. And I think, so being a director, and I've been in this job for 11 years, I think I've seen both sides of that. I've seen a parent that says, my student's not being challenged. And we start to look at what data do we have that says they are not growing. And sometimes we're like, oh my gosh, yeah, you're right, your student, they're not growing. Or sometimes we get to some other issue. They are growing. It does seem like they're being challenged, but maybe there's something else. Is your student bored, and why is that? And how do we work on that, even if they are growing and being challenged? And there might be something else. It might even be a social, emotional, whatever that's going on. I feel really strongly, and again, I'm a math girl, I'm a stats girl, I'm a data girl. I look back at the data. What data do we have? Does it show that the student's growing? And you can still have data that the student they're all advanced and whatever, and the student's like, but I'm bored. I don't want to do this. I don't want to. So that's where, can we look at mentorships? Can we look at internships? Can we look at whatever? This has not become a direct connection to how do we then differentiate better within the classroom. It hasn't. And that's still another thing that I think sometimes we haven't gotten a great handle on, because you can still have a gifted student sitting in a classroom and the teacher doesn't necessarily know how to differentiate for that student. This isn't going to solve all of that. It may help us point those parts out, but it's not going to solve all of that. But then also, what else can we look at? And we have some students that we have seen, oh my gosh, they're not growing. Is there something else? And we actually have looked at some internships and some different things. So again, still areas to grow and still things that it's not perfect, but I think that help us get at those pieces.
No, I definitely think so. Being able, like you said, just shifting the conversation so we can know these students, think about what support they need, and grow year to year as we learn what that looks like practically day to day for those students. Thank you so much for sharing this. I bet everyone has a question. You said that you're willing to share documents so nobody has to start the wheel from scratch. How do they have access to charts and documents and things that you've created that might be helpful if they want to implement something like this?
So you are welcome to email me. I do know, and you can answer this for me, Elizabeth. We can link this PowerPoint. I can link like samples of that tiered system. Can we link those documents within next to the?
Yes. Okay. I think we can. Nanette will do that. She's great at the website. We have linked other documents, so we'll figure out how to do that.
And maybe I'll even try and put them in one package or something, so it's not millions of different links. We can do that because anybody's welcome to email me, but I also know I'm also full-time working, so sometimes when I get lots of those emails, it just takes me a little while to respond. And my last slide on here, again, just coming back to those questions, whether you're watching now live or whether you're watching the recording, really thinking through all the things that that I talked through and thinking about what ideas can you take, because most times you can't take exactly what a district's done and plop it into whatever your situation is. Even as a parent, you can't walk into your high school and be like, okay, here's what we're going to do, tiered services. But what pieces could you take, and what sound good? What next step? What challenges do you see? Because sometimes that will help you adjust it in a way. And then, are there other things that you could share out? Whether it's with me, if you're a parent, what could you help share out in circles that you have? How do you look at those different pieces too? So just coming back to those questions, I wanted to make sure I left those up at the end.
Oh, I think that's amazing. We oftentimes don't have the support we need, especially for our high school students. So when we can share resources and things that people are doing, I think it's so helpful. My dog is barking. I am so sorry. No, we didn't end just in time. Oh my goodness. Okay, so next week, of course. Next week we have Dr. Rosemary Cathcart from New Zealand sharing with us, and she's talking about gifted ed being under attack. Is there a wiser way? And her title is giftedness down under actually giftedness right way up, and some things they're doing there for gifted education. So I hope you can join us. We only have 2 weeks left. So next week and then one more week of conversations with CAGT before we take a summer break. So join us. Thank you so much, Heather. This was so helpful. We appreciate it. Hope you all have a wonderful Tuesday evening.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye.